All right, let's talk about the stimulus.
Okay.
So when we talk about the stimulus, we mean the infrastructure bills. Nancy Pelosi had hoped today to actually have a framework to bring this to the House floor. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. I will say that this morning, Joe Manchin is got to be dancing a jig after what happened in Virginia. You know, seeing what it's in many ways, it's a repudiation of what he of the very things that he's been critical of, right?
Yes.
He's been critical of high taxes, and he doesn't want to raise taxes. He doesn't want to go that route. He does not want us to say goodbye to fossil fuels. And that was a resounding answer in the state of Virginia. So near his neck of the woods in West Virginia. So Joe Manchin has got to be emboldened this morning to stick to his guns on not compromising. On the stimulus front on prescription drugs, Kyrsten Sinema has caved to that piece of it, so allowing prescription drug negotiations to go on. But again, this does not look good for President Biden. For him to be able to say, hey, stand with me, you're president, because we're going to push this through. This is what the American people are calling for. Well, clearly in Virginia, maybe it's not.
Right. And so there were reports yesterday that Joe Manchin went to a lunch and that some more progressive senators gave him an earful and said that he was playing shell games because he had indicated that he was on board with the bill last week. When they came to the $1.75 trillion price tag, they thought that he was going along with it. In fact, they negotiated to his liking, right? It was a made to order. Like Subway sandwich made for you right there. So they thought he wanted that sandwich. Turns out he doesn't, and they're pissed about it. But now he's able to say, look, the American populace doesn't want just pre-packaged bills, right? They don't want me to just go along with my party. They want people who stand against a party and stand up for what they believe in. He's saying he really believes in this, right? He believes that the country can nil afford it. What Democrats are worried about at this point is that they needed this to pass well ahead of the debt ceiling, which we're coming up against again in December. They cannot push a spending bill and ask for a debt for the debt ceiling to be raised at the same time. Those things are nonsensical. But they're willing to do it. They were hoping that the American people would like celebrate this one package. Yay, high five, Clayton, high five. Yeah. And then we could go and increase our spending, right? And that somehow we wouldn't remember that in recent months, we had voted for a lot more money, but we didn't have it, right? Those things go hand in hand. And it does seem to me that Joe Manchin, despite his sort of like curmudgeonry disposition, at least he remembers that these two things are related.
I guess. I mean, you know, here's a guy who is standing firm on making sure that we have very limited climate provisions in this bill.
Yeah.
At the same, I mean, it's just to me the backdrop of this COP26 conference in Glasgow, Scotland. You know, where the United States is trying to show like genuine leadership on this issue, and one senator is making sure that we're weak-kneed when it comes to on the climate front, and making sure that we're not increasing taxes. So the Democrats right now are trying to figure out how do we bring in more tax revenue without actually raising taxes. Like, this is a great conundrum. Like, okay, so we can't raise taxes, so how do we bring in more tax revenue?
Right.
Try to solve that one. Good luck. So one of the things is to, you know, I don't know. I mean, try to increase the amount of money that you're getting from tax cheats, you know, emboldening the IRS to go after people through audits and et cetera.
Yes. And they are saying that there's a lot of money there, but at the same time, they want to spend money to get that money. They want to spend more money on beefing up the IRS. And, you know, the Democrats are acting like this package is the only way that we could then switch to a more green infrastructure. It's not.
Right.
It absolutely is not. The president could make all number of decisions right now that would change. We could make policy choices about, like, we no longer allow these number of animal kills, right? And so because of we won't have the methane in the environment, we could make rules. There's a ton of things. This is not the only way.
Yeah.
But we're pretending that it's the only way.
James Figueroa in the chat says, how much does our government want to give other countries and nothing for us on stimulus? You know, it's funny, James. I was just reading an article this morning about the amount of money that we give to countries all over the world. But a little country that I had no idea that we were giving money to, like we're threatening to withhold aid to that country until they do X, Y, and Z. Like, some African country, just a random, just amount of money that we send to other parts of the world.
Well, not a random. We're withholding money from Sudan because of a coup.
Yeah,
that's also, not quite so random.
No, but South Africa and on the list goes. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, is that where we get our quinoa? Like they have natural resources that we want, so we withhold.
Our quinoa. Right. Well, and quinoa. Where do you get quinoa?
It's a grain. It should grow really anywhere.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm Googling that.
Well, yeah, because the people who grow quinoa can't even get it because like when America wants something, we take it all. Like that's how we got Hawaii.
We are quinoa terrorists.
South America. Quinoa is native to South America, but it does grow in the United States and pretty much everywhere. Yeah, I don't think quinoa is a sensitive crop like vanilla or.
Okay, let's.
Sorry.
Let's not get de-quinoa'd here. So here's, the salt deduction is really the biggest issue right now. So Democrats, Bernie Sanders specifically, by the way, this is funny. If I just put this up on the screen, like just so you see his hair, like, can you name that senator with that hair at the bottom of the screen?
It looks like a Muppet.
Hey guys, it's me, Bernie. I'm here to try to keep things in line. Anyway, Democrats' proposed tax cuts for the rich are threatening to derail the Build Back Better Act. So a group of House Democrats right now are demanding that tax break that disproportionately hits wealthy people in Democratic states is removed. The SALT tax, and Bernie Sanders is trying to stop them. Here's a series of tweets that Bernie sent out. And he said, I'm open to a compromise approach which protects the middle class in high tax states. I will not support more tax breaks for billionaires. He goes on to say, according to media reports, Democratic negotiators are working on a repeal of the SALT deduction cap for up to 5 years, which would cost $475 billion and give the richest 5% $400 billion in tax cuts. Again, this was a big sticking point in New Jersey politics.
Yes.
As a result, the top 1% would pay lower taxes after passage of the Build Back Better plan than they did after the Trump tax cut in 2017. This is beyond unacceptable. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, the last thing we should be doing is giving more tax breaks to the very rich. Democrats campaigned and won on an agenda that demands that the very wealthy finally pay their fair share. No one that gives them more tax breaks. No, not one that gives them more tax breaks.
But again, this is... This one gets under my skin. So what we're talking about, let's just sort of lay it out, and then if we can debate the merits, right?
Okay.
So it sets a cap on how much of your state taxes you can then write off on your federal taxes. So it's $10,000, right? In most cases. So if your state taxes were $15,000, you cannot write off $15,000. You can only write off 10. So that extra 5,000 is subject to double taxation, right? And so this really harms people who live in high tax Democratic states. And that's why the Democrats have spoken out against it, except for these progressives like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And she's like, yeah, that's fair. We want those people paying on extra. And so, our accountant called the SALT deduction a penalty for voting for Trump tax because it hit really hard these Democratic states, right? So,
yeah, let's be clear in New Jersey.
Nothing makes sense.
Exactly, Judge. So in New Jersey specifically,
$10,000 is not going to pay anybody's taxes in New Jersey if you own a house there, right?
Well, my point is, I've done a lot of real estate work in New Jersey, right? And I can tell you, just going through tax records on different properties, that houses that you would say that's not a wealthy house, like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, in Essex County, New Jersey, or
Essex County is one of the highest tax counties in the country,
right?
Actually.
But even still, so just like a modest house can have taxes per year of like $11,000,
yes,
$12,000,
yes.
So this is not millionaires and billionaires.
No.
This is a small single-family home very often in like Essex County and
yes.
What's the county up towards New York?
Bergen County,
et cetera. Yeah.
Yes.
So, to say that this is just for millionaires is a bit disingenuous. It does hit. But, Bernie, to his credit, said, look, I'm open to compromise here. which protects the middle class in high tax states. I will not support, though, tax breaks for billionaires, which
Okay.
is what this is in. So, hey, Marion, he's saying I'm open to it. Right now, this is a huge sticking point, though.
Yes. I've discussed this with people on Twitter before, and some people are saying, well, that's the state's fault for making taxes so high on its residents. Like, other states don't feel the need to do this, and if you live in a more reasonably taxed state, like Chicago, right? Chicago's not a
city.
state, sorry. Like, I was going to say Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas has no state taxes. They are able to do it.
But Texas has property taxes,
Property taxes,
not income
yes.
taxes. Yeah.
But they're not the same rate, not even close. And that can these states then make it reasonable for? I don't know, right? I've never run a state budget.
You're up in Washington State, David. What is are property taxes through the roof up there?
You know what? I don't pay property taxes because I rent, so I don't honestly know.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
I was wondering if you heard about it. I mean, I don't hear anything about Washington State. I always hear about New Jersey, Connecticut, and
California.
For
And New
property
York.
tax issues. And guess what?
it says,
Is there any reason, like all of the people in those states, like that's where you have the biggest exodus of people, right?
Yes.
That are moving out of those states and moving to Texas and moving to Florida and moving to Tennessee.
so I see here Washington State has property tax rates below the national average of 1.0%. More specifically, the state's average effective tax rate is 0.93%.
Wow. That's pretty good.
yeah.
That's pretty good. So where we are right now is that Nancy Pelosi has been hoping that she can get something to the House floor. Again, the sticking point right now is on this SALT deduction, whether or not Bernie Sanders and progressives are going to hold firm on this issue. They're not getting what they want on community college. We know that community college is out of the mix now. That's unfortunate. So no community college for kids.
At this point, I am leaning towards we're getting nothing, none of this. Like, the bill's just going to die, and,
Well,
and
that's
we'll
what
have
I'm
to
saying.
get these things in piecemeal.
That's what I'm saying with Joe Manchin now emboldened this morning after what happened in Virginia last night, losing the election there for Democrats. Like, the president's coattails are not strong. He's showing sort of a middle way that may be appealing to some people, not to me. It's not appealing to me at all.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he's dancing a jig this morning. Is Joe Manchin?